Greetings, everyone. Hopefully, y'all can hear me. Hopefully, I am live. Uh, it's more fancy now. We're going live. But I want to first start out by saying Happy New Year to everyone. Happy Kwanzaa, although Kwanzaa ended a few days ago. Happy holidays for all the various other uh, holidays and holy days. There's a distinction. I want to first, well, I already said first. So, secondly, I just want to state that we need to understand this in its historical context and the historical arc from the perspective, from the eyes, from the lenses, from the centering of African Americans. As a scholar, that's what I do. Uh, be it when I study Africa or the diaspora, I use a cultural centered or African centered perspective and analytical paradigm. And that's where I'm coming from with you. We're going to look at this through the eyes of black people, right? I'm black. I teach black history. I teach African history. I teach African diasporic history. I teach black studies, African and African American studies, right? So those are my areas of expertise, generally speaking. And I pick up in regards to African American history, Civil War moving forward. So we're going to start with Reconstruction. In fact, let me back it up a little bit. We're going to start with the election of President Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president of the United States, because this is all relevant and you'll see where I'm going. Now, when Abraham Lincoln won the presidency, the Confederates declared themselves an independent nation and they seceded from the United States of America and became citizens of the Confederate States of America. They disavowed their American citizenship. Instead of storming the Capitol, they chose that, right? But that was their spirit, though. The spirit we're seeing still today demonstrated yesterday, right? All right, well, why am I framing it that way, right? They did not like the outcome of the presidential elections. In this case, it was because of Abraham Lincoln was anti-slavery. One issue party, one issue president. The Republican Party at the time was a one issue party, anti-slavery. But that anti-slavery was very nuanced, so you could argue there were other issues within that centered around economics, politics, and culture. All though anti-slavery. Not black equality, but anti-slavery. And the 11 states chose to leave and start their own nation, as opposed to attempting a coup d'etat to take over America, right? And then we had the Civil War, as we know, right? The Confederates. Then, during Reconstruction, this is something that most people don't understand, that this happened during Reconstruction as well as immediately after the death of Reconstruction, right? So during Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877, we had these racial attacks against African Americans in the former Confederacy, right? All across the former Confederacy. And in some places that were southern slaveholding states, but they remained in the Union, like Tennessee, or large portions of Tennessee. You know, that's why we had Andrew Johnson still in Congress. Andrew Johnson then became vice president. Southern Democrat from Tennessee. Nonetheless, after the 1876 election between Rutherford B. Hayes and Tillman the Democrat, Southern Democrat, Rutherford B. Hayes the Republican, right? Immediately after the casting of the ballots and the counting of the ballots, what the then neo-Confederates, because that's what they were then and that's what we're seeing now, neo-Confederates, what did they immediately do? They challenged the election results, claiming fraud and cheating in majority African American counties throughout the former Confederacy. Right? Today, we saw this in the 2020 elections. The neo-Confederates did the same thing, but they didn't restrict it to the former Confederacy. So counties with majority African American populations, the Republicans, the GOP, right, the border states, right, Benson, the Republicans, GOP, and Donald Trump's campaign, they immediately began alleging, before the votes were even cast, and while they were being cast, they immediately alleged voter fraud in majority black counties. Wayne County, Michigan, Fulton County, Georgia, are the most glaring examples. One, because they got so much media coverage, right? That's exactly what they did with the 1876 elections, right? If it's majority black, they're not going to vote for us. They're cheating. Let's contest that. And that led to the Compromise of 1877, which the Republicans, the anti-slavery, but they weren't for black equality, sold black people out, sold America out, generally black people out specifically. They sold us out. They cut the deal for Rutherford B. Hayes to be inaugurated as president, sworn in as president of the United States. His first act based upon the backroom deal between the Democrats and Republicans in order to prevent a second civil war or the continuation or the re-inflammation of the Civil War, cut a backdoor deal at the Capitol and said then the Hayes' first act as president would be to do what? Remove federal troops from the South. What that essentially did, remove the federal protections of African Americans' rights, right? Their voting rights, due process, equal protection under the law, civil rights, right? That effectively ushered in 100 plus years of Jim Crow segregation and racialized terror against African Americans. Right. You know, we could sue them and get reparations for that. Y'all confused on what y'all be talking about reparations. You trying to sue the federal government for stuff that private citizens did. Right. You need to sue them private citizens and corporations. But for this, you can sue federal, state, and local municipalities for that. Right. That's what no one's talking about. That's why this reparations talk is some bullshit and ain't gonna lead nowhere. It's a con game that y'all clowns thinking you woke are falling for. Let's get to that, but that's a different story. Nonetheless, after the removal of those federal troops, we had, once again, open season on black people, as Brother Benson said, right? Open season on our heads, right? So to remove the black elected officials and their Republican allies that dominated state governments in places like the Carolinas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and others, right? They immediately engaged in violence. They did what we saw them do. But in this case, they stormed the state capitals and physically murdered, maimed, assaulted, and chased out the black elected officials as well as their white Republican colleagues, right? Why am I saying this? Because these neo-Confederates stormed the federal capital. But what many people missed, because I know most of y'all don't watch the news, you got what was going on from fucking Facebook with your clown asses, right? But they were posted at various state capitals across the nation. They were posted at the ready at various state capitals throughout the nation. So we see the memes And they make a good point. Even Morning Joe and his wife made this point that if it would have been black people, they would have got shot in the face. If it would have been turban wearing brown skinned folk, right, they would have got sniped, right? But no one is asking why, when Black Lives Matter protested, that they had all that military protection and show of force and used it. But with these neo-Confederates, they did not. The answer is simple, but you don't want to ask yourself that because it's going to hurt. Because black people are cowards. That's their view of black people, that we are cowards. We ain't going to do nothing. We ain't going to do shit. The most we going to do is burn up some buildings in our community. We don't own none of that property anyway. So that's a false argument, but we're going to destroy our own, right? And then that just helps them, if we've paid attention to history, that helps them to usher in the second phase of the domestic American Marshall Plan, the restructuring and rebuilding of America's infrastructure in the new millennium. Detroit is a great example of that. After the riots, they abandoned Detroit purposefully. And then once whites got back control of Detroit, basically black people begged white people to take back control of Detroit because of the failed leadership of black leadership in Detroit, if we're being real. And then the conditions created by not supporting Detroit, isolating Detroit, right? And then when white leadership took back over, in less than 2 years, they remade downtown Detroit. It's like Charlotte, North Carolina, right? And they're restructuring, rezoning, residential, commercial, all that. And that's how places that weren't accessible for black people to live in when the blacks ruled Detroit, now white people are being able to gentrify and things of that nature now that white people took over. Like, it was this long-term plan. And it's across the nation, but we haven't paid attention. And the scholars been writing about it, but we don't read. We'd rather listen to Umar Johnson or some dumbass rapper or whoever, some dumbass clown trying to get you to send them $5 like a young Pharaoh. Some bullshit. Some bullshit, right? So nonetheless, they were afraid and are afraid that the neo-Confederates would start armed conflict across the United States of America. While y'all dumbasses was shooting up the fucking sky for New Year's Eve, you clowns. I've been avoiding trying to get news reports and see news reports about innocent people being killed again because y'all dummies want to shoot at the fucking sky, wasting all them bullets. You can't shoot, ain't been to a shooting range, ain't got no training. You know what I'm saying? Lil Durk is a clown. He can kill other little kids, but he wouldn't be able to lead his gang, his set in military actions if a race war erupted. They have no training. They're not getting those trainings. That's not what they're about. They're about selling dope and terrifying their own community. That's all they're about. They're not revolutionary. They lost that. They lost that in the 1970s, them gangs out of Chicago, and in the late 60s, the early 70s, you know, those gangs broke, you know, a lot of them broke away from the Black Panther Party because their leaders made them join the Black Panther Party. So by 82, they broke away and they were counter-revolutionary just like the gangs in Chicago are today and became drug cartels, right? So they're not afraid of black people. They're not afraid of black people with guns. What you gonna do? You gonna do what you been doing. Hashtag some bullshit. Make some fucking memes. Or maybe you think you woke. I'm not gonna vote. You a coward. You a coward. You ain't gonna vote, so what you gonna do? You ain't doing nothing. You're a coward. Posing as a revolutionary. You ain't no revolutionary. You're a coward, counter-revolutionary. And I don't care if you my family, my friends, my fraternity brothers, or whoever I love. If that's your perspective, hear it again from me. You are a coward, and they know you a coward, and they play you like a coward while you pound your chest around your fucking house and pound your chest on Facebook. Right? But they afraid of them neo-Confederates. That's why they took the action that they took of non-action. Right? That's the real truth, right? So nonetheless, right? So we had these racial massacres, these political racialized massacres by storming these state capitals in places like Wilmington, North Carolina, various places in Louisiana, so county seats, places in Mississippi, and others. But those are the famous ones: the Wilmington massacre, right? The Colfax massacre, the New Orleans massacre, right? These are the popular ones that you can find easily when you do a Google search, right? You know, this is replaying that, right? And they are neo-Confederates, right? They had the Confederate, well, it's not the Confederate flag, but it's what we falsely call the Confederate battle flag. It's the battle flag of the Mississippi Regulars of the Confederacy. That's what the battle flag is, right? They had them flag, that ensign with them, prominent in their insurrection and siege of the state capitol, right? So they understand. They got these toothless, stupid dope fiends. And if this hurts your feelings, because I grew up with some of you, comment on my Facebook, you a fucking crackhead, talking shit, a crackhead. You probably was smoking crack when you made your post. Fucking crackhead dropout. How dare you try to play them games with me? How dare you? But anyway, be best, right? You know, no, they not neo-Confederates. They got the Confederate iconography. They're using the same exact language of the Confederates, the same exact language of the neo-Confederates from 1900 to 1994. Same exact language, but they not neo-Confederates. Same leaders, but they not neo-Confederates. Same political movement, but they not neo-Confederates. Yes, they are. And that's what this is. This is a neo-Confederate movement, right? When they said make America great again, y'all act like y'all didn't know what they was talking about. Some of these people that talk that trash in defense of them try to change history, deny history, ignore reality, ignore facts. See, you get your own interpretation of the facts, but you don't get your own set of facts, right? And I know that hurts because you are a willful traitor to the U.S. Constitution and to the Stars and Stripes, right? You say, well, dang, Brother Kalanji, that's weird for you to say because, you know, you speak a lot of radical stuff and you speak on radical stuff. You research radical stuff. You have radical views. Well, my radical views are rooted in the reality that America is a fraud and has denied black people up until this day our constitutional rights. You see, my radicalness is rooted in that America is not rooted in democracy because we're a republic. We're rooted in racialized capitalist exploitation. So the things that we say America stands for are lies. So that's where my radicalness comes from, right? But the people that I say this to and push back against me are them very same people that support these neo-Confederates or are neo-Confederates themselves. So they'll say to me, if you don't like America, why don't you leave? Well, if y'all don't like America, why don't y'all leave? Right? They say to me, if you don't like America, then you're a traitor. Well, if you don't like America, then you're a traitor. A historic traitor, if we look at the historic art, you're a Confederate, you're a neo-Confederate, traitorous, treasonous bastards and cowards. That's a fact. And you're a part of that. And you're supporting that. And there's no way you can deny it. And then black people talking about my vote don't count, why voting, why voting. See, you're a coward. And they banking on your cowardice. If your vote don't count, then why we got all this funky shit going on about your vote? If your vote don't count, why this armed intimidation to nullify your vote then? If your vote don't count, right? See, some of y'all pop off, ain't read shit your whole life, right? If your vote don't count, then why Georgia is what's going on with Georgia? right? My issue is that we just voting for either one or two parties, and we need to start our own independent third parties all across the nation that can coalesce into a national movement. Right? That takes working organization. That working organization that Stacey Abrams did. My only criticism is she did it in the name of the Georgia Democratic Party. Right? But that same work that she did is what y'all supposed to be doing. You ain't did it. When you was crying like a little bitch when Trump got elected, you didn't do it then. Talked all that shit. I told y'all this is the way to go. This is what we do. You ain't do it, just talk shit. And then didn't vote. Some of y'all didn't vote again. But just talk shit and then just voted for the Democrats. And then we gonna see. The thing about Trump, he was just so crazy. Not just an existential threat, but a direct, literal threat to the world. Right? So getting him out, I dig that, was a top priority. So I voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, not because I liked them, right? So what we're going to get in regards to policy under Biden and Harris is going to be a return to before Trump, to the lukewarm, lightweight racist policies of Obama, of W. Bush, of slick Bill Clinton, of H.W. Bush, Ronald Reagan. That's what we gonna go back to. So the fight don't end. We just, I guess, went back to the starting line, I guess. So don't misconstrue my statements, right? So, what does this mean? This means simply for black people, we've been here before. We know what to do, but we don't want to do it. Right? We was taught from 1900 to 1965 that neither the Republican or the Democratic Party give a damn about black people. They manipulate, exploit, abuse, kill, murder, and etc. black people for political gain. That's what we learned. After the void was created in the Democratic Party and former civil rights leaders moved into the Democratic Party, right? That's when we got confused. We thought the Democratic Party wasn't a Democratic Party no more, to be honest with you. And then we couldn't understand why we got these Democrats, old white men and some old white women, who got ties to the Ku Klux Klan, ties to segregation, pro-segregationist stances, tied to racism. We all confused. What the hell you confused for? Y'all thinking y'all fake woke Negroes, man, get on my last damn nerves. Y'all thought y'all was telling somebody something that Joe Biden had a history of racism and white supremacy? Y'all thought y'all was saying something about Hillary Clinton? I told y'all dumbasses that a long time ago. If you paid attention to any college class, you learned that a long time ago. Right? Y'all, but Senator Byrd and they fawning over him. Y'all thought he was going to use that. We knew that already, and if you didn't know that, that's shame on you. Because when it was going on live on TV, your dumb ass wasn't paying attention. Was running around doing some bullshit, getting high, drunk, or some bullshit. You definitely wasn't reading and paying attention to newspapers in the news. That ain't new. We gonna go back to that. Right? What did they squash? The Democratic Party did this, along with the Republicans. So Republicans and Democrats did this to black people in the late 60s, early 70s that was trying to do this independent organizing. They squashed them. If you don't believe me, just read the history of SNCC, right? Read about the Mississippi Democratic Freedom Party, right? With Fannie Lou Hamer, Stokely Carmichael, and SNCC and them folk. Read Bloody Lowndes about the Lowndes County Freedom Party. It's a book written by Hassan Kwame Jeffries, right? Stokely Carmichael, Fannie Lou, and the locals in Lowndes County, Alabama, right? And we saw it in other places as well, right? We ain't want to do no independent organizing, none of that. See, that's what them neo-Confederates did. And they hurt because they lost the election. And the reason they lost the election, because black people finally came out in record numbers and voted. We did it for Obama because he was black. Didn't do it for Clinton because we hate her, right? and they did it to get Trump out of office. The record black numbers. So, first thing they got to do is undermine the legitimacy of the black vote. Right? Y'all don't get it. Y'all don't get it. No organizing, lack of critical analysis. You got access to all the information. There's no excuse. No excuse. Right? And now we looking all shocked. What did that same time period I told you about? So, white backlash, white supremacist black backlash against the outcome of the Civil War and the policies and things of Reconstruction. So with the death of Reconstruction, we had that white backlash, right? With the infusion of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of African diasporans coming from places like the West Indies in the Caribbean to America, right? That's part of the second wave of African American migration from the South to the North, and is the period that people call the Great Migration, right? So more African Americans from the South to the North, and then you had all of these West Indians and Caribbean blacks coming to the North, right? That's when Harlem became Harlem, right? This is the first 10 years of the 1900s is when Harlem became Harlem. You could read Black Manhattan by James Weldon Johnson, and he describes it, right? We saw the backlash. Again, the Neo-Confeds. And that's where you get all this continued racial terror, but by then it was a system, right? Segregation, all that. But then the erecting of Confederate monuments. I'm not talking about military bases. The erecting of Confederate monuments coincides with that. That's part of the white backlash. That is part of the curtain of white supremacy and racialized terrorists falling over the South, the former Confederacy, and then, to be 100% accurate, spread across all of America. All of America. Michigan, New York, Indiana, all of them, right? Jim Crow, segregation. Racialized terror, right? White backlash, right? We've seen it in response to the civil rights movement, the modern civil rights movement of the post-World War II, post-Korean conflict civil rights movement, and during the later days of the Korean conflict, right? So we're talking about the 50s and 60s. The civil rights movement as you all understand it, because you don't like to look at history, so I'm just happy you were at least aware of that. But I hope you realize that that was just a couple decades of the longer civil rights movement, right? I don't consider resistance to slavery part of the civil rights movement. So I'm saying the civil rights movement started during Reconstruction, right? Now, some people could argue free blacks fighting for their rights during slavery could be part of the civil rights movement, but their number one preoccupation was anti-slavery. So that wasn't the civil rights. They just freedom. And many of them was fighting for the freedom to get black people free to leave America. So that's not the same as the civil rights movement from my perspective. But nonetheless, right? Saw the backlash. So we saw 70s, 80s, 1990s, white backlash. And out of that, starting in the 60s, is when we had the birth of the modern conservative movement in response. It was part of white backlash. Barry Goldwater, you know, Hillary Clinton, then Hillary Rodham was a Goldwater girl, you know, who ran for president in 64, right, as a segregationist. Ronald Reagan was his national spokesperson, and he won the governorship of California as a segregationist. His future vice president, George H.W. Bush, ran and lost for a Texas state legislature as a segregationist, right? So that's where you got the birth of the modern conservatism, right? So then you had Reagan conservatism, right? Because they were the children, they were the young people, you know, of Goldwater. Nixon, Ronald Reagan, all those guys, right? They were the young people, although Reagan was older, right? But they were the young people. Their movement were the young people of that Goldwater movement, right? So then we had Reagan, right? And then what was the next stage of that white backlash? Right? The Tea Party. The Tea Party, right? And then the backlash to Obama, the white backlash to Obama, because the Tea Party was his enemies in Congress and government, right? Then we had what, this Trumpism that was started, fueled by, right, the Tea Party, but then these other fringe groups, right? The fringe groups that Barry Goldwater himself had called fringe lunatics. That's the religious evangelical right, the John Birch Society type conspiratorial theorists. That's what we got. That's the Trump coalition. Tea Party, evangelical right-wing Christians, and the John Birch Society ilk of conspiratorial theories. Which is ironic because most of them conspiracy theories that y'all fake woke Negroes be out here spitting is actually white supremacist propaganda started by the John Birch Society and perpetuated to this day by people like QAnon and the others. That's the irony of it all. That in your effort to be woke, because your dumb ass won't read a goddamn book, you go to YouTube and don't even know where this information coming from, and these niggers are being paid by these white supremacists to propagate this shit, these young Pharaoh ass motherfuckers, to propagate this shit for their own profit. And you don't even know where this information is coming from. You can't recognize it because you don't read or pay attention. That, oh my God, that ain't an original thought. That's these people's thought. What's up with my mans? What's up with my mans? Something suspicious. He's suspect. I can't trust him. Because he's presenting this information like it's some research he did, and he's been really just given a script with a check. Right. So that's this white backlash we have. And they're going to try to deny that. They're going to frame it 84 different ways but that, because they know you don't know history. And more often than not, they don't know history themselves. So they can say these things to you, and how can you retort? Because you don't have a clue. Just like people run around and say that the Confederate monuments wasn't about white supremacy. You don't even know when they were erected. So you can't even retort it. Right? Down here in Jackson County, North Carolina, at the county seat in Silver, North Carolina, they got a Confederate monument. They interviewed me for the local newspaper, the Silver Herald. So before I did the interview, I read every article in the Silver Herald related to that Confederate monument to prepare myself for the interview. And you know what the people were arguing in defense of the Confederate monument? Is that it wasn't erected to promote white supremacy, intimidation, and racial terror. It was erected in 1915. If you know anything about black history, American history, the year 1915 is actually one of those pivotal years in white supremacy, right? It's when we got Birth of the Nation, the film that was screened at the White House by Woodrow Wilson, right? And other racial massacres. Because immediately after we had 1917, a bunch of racial massacres. 1919, a bunch of racial massacres, right? 1915 is also the same year that the Daughters of the Confederacy started traveling around the nation outside of the former Confederacy, establishing branches and shit, and erecting Confederate monuments in those places that weren't even the former Confederacy, but who had adopted segregation, right? So you're going to tell me that it wasn't about, but you don't know. And then they say, how could it be intimidation? It ain't no black people in Jackson County. Well, what I've discovered and what I'm continuing to discover, that Silver, where the county seat is, Cullowhee, where I live, there was large black communities going back to, well, obviously during slavery, but free blacks after the Civil War. Much of where I live at, in Cullowhee, on this side of campus of Western Carolina University, used to all be owned by black people. They had a fucking church. They moved the church down by me on the other side, still walking distance from my house. A black cemetery for the church. It was AME Zion Church, Mount Zion AME Zion Church. Right there, they got a little plaque on campus, but nobody goes up there because it's by a residence hall. Nobody pays attention to it. You know what I'm saying? If you go down the mountain on my main street that I will pull out of my apartment complex and make a right to go into town, all that was owned by black people. Many of those families, I come to find out, their descendants are my fraternity brothers. I found that out on J5 in a J5 celebration Zoom call when I was talking to brothers who pledged and graduated from Western Carolina University. So, like, when you don't know history, they can tell you these arguments and you're going to sop it up because you don't know no better. You be like, oh, no, it makes sense. Why would it be for intimidation if it wasn't no black people around? That is why they started it back in the late 80s. In the early 80s. They started promoting these black conservative thinkers that were attacking black history and black studies. Right? That's why they did it. Right? And then we seen it continue all the way up. The Reagan presidency, H.W. Bush presidency, Bill Clinton's presidency, right? W. Bush's presidency, Barack Obama's presidency, right? And it continued in Donald Trump's presidency. These forces, right? And what? So they came up with this fake ass commission that's supposed to teach patriotic history. Because me teaching this reality, what I just taught to you, to my students, they would view as unpatriotic. Right? They attacking theoretical paradigms that unearth some of these things like critical race theory. They don't even know what fuck critical race theory is. Them white boys on my timeline on Facebook who attack critical race theory, they ain't never even read Delgado and Stefanich's book. They ain't read Derek Bell's articles in those law reviews and those law journals. They don't even know what the hell critical race theory is. And then y'all Negroes don't either because y'all don't read. So they attacking and you don't even know what the hell that means. They speak in English, but they talk in a different language to your ignorant asses. Right? You know, that's why they're attacking it. That's why. Because it can be presented that what happened yesterday wasn't the act of neo-Confederates without knowing history. Right? It's so simple, but y'all can't see it. But y'all rather argue about if Cardi B should have let her daughter listen to WAP or not. Some bullshit like that. Y'all dumb as hell, thinking y'all smart. You got the capacity to be the highest thinkers ever to live on the planet Earth, but you're not using it. So you don't have mental retardation, developmental issues or nothing. You are willfully dumb as hell. So if you're willfully dumb as hell, that means you dumb as fuck. And we got a whole bunch of people, the majority of the population, dumb as fuck. Because they're willfully dumb. They have the capacity to be the highest intellectual, highest thinkers in the history of humanity. But they willfully choose not to. Willfully choose not to. Right? So what's really going on is these neo-Confederates, they taking it to the next level. This is the outgrowth of those militias, those white supremacists. See, those who follow me on Facebook know I've been trying to warn y'all about this for years, right? I've been talking about the the Northwest, all that. Talking about the Midwest, right? You know, they've already bombed federal buildings. They've already seized federal lands. They've already had shootouts with federal law enforcement to the death. They're already engaged in underground guerrilla subversion and insurrection. Have been for decades. But y'all walking around blind and stupid. Won't pay attention. Won't read. Won't read the newspaper. Right? Won't watch the news. I ain't talking about MSNBC and Fox News. That's not news. That's entertainment. I'm talking about BBC, Al Jazeera, CBC, and etc. Talking about them international news outlets where you're going to get news. Because they turn it all into entertainment. That's why MSNBC is full of shit. Every fucking night, Rachel Maddow crying, talking about Trump done did the most worst thing possible in humanity. Well, shit, yesterday you said the same thing. Day before that, you been saying that same shit every night crying. Shut that shit up. Fucking soft-ass motherfuckers, right? And then the Fox News people, they got the opposite slant. Remember, it was with Obama. He did the worst thing possible, and now Trump did the greatest thing possible. It's like, really? Yesterday he said he did the greatest thing. He did the greatest thing today. Like, really? It's all entertainment. It's fake. If you pay attention, when them news outlets, both of them get sued, what are their legal defense? Well, we're not a news agency. We're an entertainment agency. But y'all too dumb to even read that. Right? So where do these Trump supporters go get their news? They go to QAnon, these dark web chat rooms, whatever. I'm not using the proper technical term, right? They got outlets that they've created like OAN and all these others. I got the apps on Roku, so I know they exist, and I click on them and look and see what's going on. Where do you black people get your news from? Do you even read black newspapers? Do you even know the name of the black newspaper in your state? Where do you get your news from? Fuck BET. I don't even fuck with BET. I don't watch nothing on BET at all. Not even the BET Awards, none of that. As soon as my frat brother sold it to Viacom and the white people, what did they pull down? They pulled down the news with Ed Gordon. The youth development programming like Teen Summit and others. All that. They just made it fucking twerkathon 24/7, and now they got these dumbass, fake ass reality shows that they got on syndication and some bullshit. Y'all eat up. Y'all know more about the real hip hop hoes or wherever fucking city they got it going on at than what's really going on. Don't read nothing, right? And these neo-Confederates just gaining traction. So you laughing at the toothless ones they got pictures of for your funny little memes. And I laugh at them too, because it should be funny. So I ain't hating. I'm a comedian. I crack jokes. I like comedy. I like raunchy, off-color, race comedy. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to keep it real, So people that know me know I crack them type jokes. And sometimes they got to tell me, all right, we're going to have sensitive people coming through. All right, let me scale it back. Or, these people, when they find out you're a professor, they're going to be hating. So, all right, let me tone down, that kind of comedy I got to keep amongst my friends, right? Every now and then you'll see it on Facebook because in theory, all my Facebook friends are my virtual friends or whatnot, right? That's why, my stuff ain't public. You got the two people standing next to each other on my security settings because of that, right? So, I'm not hating on those, but I'm like, y'all missing the forest for the trees. You missing the whole point. It's real funny to say these toothless meth, heroin, opioid, crackhead, dope fiends because you're letting the doctors off the hook, the lawyers off the hook, the teachers off the hook, the elected officials off the hook, right? Just like when people be like, oh, W. Bush was stupid. W. Bush is not stupid. Was never stupid. They don't let stupid people be a pilot of multi-million-dollar, nearly $1 billion airplane for the United States Air Force as a pilot. Right. Donald Trump ain't stupid. He might have mental illness. I'm not a doctor, so I can't. But he's not stupid. He knows exactly what he was doing. And it worked, except for he didn't get his second term in office. But it worked. Exactly. He knew exactly what he was doing. Right. He knew. They scolded the left for virtual signaling. He was virtual signaling. You just like that virtue. For those who support Trump, so you didn't view it that way. Just like when the people on the left, they like, Obama, so they didn't view it that way. And then they get mad when I point out, no, Obama, that was some whole ass shit he did. He's virtual signaling and talking bad and down about black people, right? And they got mad at me. There's many people on here, oh, you got an infatuation with the Obamas. No, they was the fucking president. I got an infatuation with critiquing and analyzing and attacking white supremacist structures and exploitative capitalist structures. And Obama was the steward of that as the president of the United States. Just like I dogged the presidents before him, I'm going to dog the presidents after them. Right? So I don't know what y'all, but you think you smart. Black people talking bad about me because I criticize Obama. They ain't even know the policies I was talking about. Y'all don't even know the policies that Trump was doing. All you know is what the entertainment company told you. Right? So you don't even know what's going on. You don't even know how they're destroying and attacking and trying to once again silence black history, accurate African American history. And what is the benefit of that besides what I discussed? Now you got black people attacking Native Americans for white supremacist structures, for white supremacist exploitative capitalist structures, right? Denying actual history with proof, quantitative proof and qualitative proof of that over 95% of us who are black people who are in the United States of America are descendants of the victims of the transatlantic slave trade. What's the other percentage? Willful migrants. Willful migrants. During the transatlantic slave trade and then after the end of the transatlantic slave trade. They say, no, that didn't happen. One brother tried to tell me, well, why don't they got slave ships? They do, dumbass. You can go on a tour on them, dumbass. All you have to do is Google, let's tour a slave ship. They got records. You're talking about people who were merchants. Nobody keep better records than merchants. They are at Michigan State University. The slave ship manifests. Right? But no. And then they'll show me a fucking oil painting of an Amazulu warrior talking about that was the original American. I'm like, you just the dumbest dumb. And then they get emboldened and then tell me, oh, you just indoctrinated by the white man. Because they have no clue about real black history and about black studies. They don't even know what we read, what we study, who the scholars are, none of that. They assume I've been taught by a bunch of white people. Ain't that about a bitch? Ain't that about a bitch? They assume I've been trained by a bunch of white people. I'm like, wow, that ain't even how I go, fam. That ain't even how I go. At one time, it might have been that way, but we had what? That cultural and political and philosophical revolution of the Black Power movement that brought black studies, right? We had these radical black scholars that didn't have to be in the shadows as prior generations were. People like Dr. Carter G. Woodson, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. They were regulated, to the most part, to the shadows of American academia and American scholarly discourse, and people like Dr. Ralph J. Bunch and those guys, right? But after the Black Power cultural revolution, political revolution, philosophical revolution, right? Then, black students and students from international students from Africa, Asia, and other parts of the Americas, right? They demanded something that resulted in black studies, ethnic studies, right? Then they demanded what? More black professors to teach black history and things of that nature, right? To the point where what did the white scholars who thought that they were like Melville Herskovich or somebody like the gatekeepers of Negro knowledge, what? They started getting mad, writing journal articles and shit talking about the ghettoization of African studies, the ghettoization of American history. These direct titles, direct quotes, my guys. But you don't even know the war that's going on. So when you see these neo-Confederates saying this shit, making these proclamations, creating these fake commissions, trying to silence black scholars, you don't even know what that's about. You don't even know what's come from. I done had some people, somebody I really love, tell me, well, fuck them. They don't, blah, blah, blah. They don't do nothing anyway, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, bro, you realize you're talking directly about me. And I do more than what you will ever do. I do more in 1 year than what you've done your whole life to help black people. But we don't do nothing. Because you don't know, because you don't read. So you don't even know what we do. You don't even know what we do. Right? And that's exactly how they want it. Just like you don't know what we do, you don't know what these neo-Confeds are really doing. You won't even be able to recognize a neo-Confed. You don't need them to wear a fucking Mississippi regular Confederate flag, battle flag, for you to recognize them as neo-Confeds. Y'all so simple-minded, you just looking for the R after they name. And if they got an R by it, then they neo-Confeds. And if they got a D, then what, they John Brown? Hell no. That ain't how it goes, right? So that historical arc and context of the 2020 elections is rooted in the death of Reconstruction, the white backlash and racialized terror, right? The undermining of the black franchisement, that's the vote, the electoral power of black people, right? You know, it's a continuation, it's an arc of that. That's what we're seeing today. And can't nobody tell me I'm wrong. Not because I'm the smartest guy in the world, because the evidence is right there. It's right there, right? And I'm going to end with this. Just think about this. If you was a little kid, you was 5 years old, somebody broke in your crib, and I hope this never happened to anyone, and I hope this never happens to anyone. Someone break in your crib and kill your parents. And while that is going on, you hear them say, fuck it. O block, nigga. O block. 30 years from now, when you hear somebody screaming O block, you know exactly where they coming from, right? That they are criminal, that they harm and exploit the people in their own community. You're going to know what that means automatically, right? Right? But y'all don't know. They screaming O block and you don't even know what they saying. They telling you exactly the feel, where they coming from and what their agenda is. But you can't recognize it. They speaking English, but you don't know the language. You don't understand what they saying. Right? When they say shit like states' rights, when they say shit like the tyranny, right? That's all that Confederate language. It literally is, right? They talk about small federal government, right? But they want it huge and big for their benefits, right? They want it huge and big for their benefits, right? They talk about spending, talking about we're fiscal conservatives. They ain't mind giving tens of trillions of dollars to the 1%, did they? But then these motherfuckers arguing over giving you $600 enough. And you be like, yeah, it was the Republicans. No, see, y'all ain't paid attention. A lot of Democrats wasn't down with it either. But you ain't paying attention. You know? And you know what wing of the Democratic Party they come from? The Obama wing. The Joe Biden wing. They would have been Republicans if it wasn't for the far right of the evangelical far right. They would have been Republicans. Like Clinton would have been a Republican. They called him a Reagan Democrat, but y'all don't remember that. So, if Clinton furthered Reagan's policies and Obama furthered Clinton's policies, Obama furthered Reagan's policies, which are the policies of the neo-Confederates. Obama furthered Trump's agenda further than Trump did. That's facts, but you ain't paying attention to the policy. You know? So I'm almost about an hour. I didn't think I would talk that long. Yes, I got to ranting, even got to raising my voice, even got to cursing. But shit, I had to tell you how I felt it. I had to talk to you like I was on the street, standing next to you on the corner, and we was drinking a 40, smoking a blunt. Had to talk to you at the language level that you understood. Some of y'all say, well, I'm not on that level. Well, good. So you got it readily real quick then. But the others, see, now what I hope to happen, the motherfuckers done pulled out their computer and got or their smartphone and they got to Googling some shit. Right? What I hope is, you know, they go to Amazon.com and put books and then search for things like Reconstruction. So if you're interested in an accurate history of Reconstruction, there's 2 books I suggest. I'm going to say the first book because it's a black author and he's one of my heroes. And I'm not saying he was perfect. It's a lot of criticisms I have of him. But, you know, and he was fighting against, now I'm getting academic-y for my people who are historians, you know, somebody who debunked the whole Dunning school of lies history of Civil War and Reconstruction. That was Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois in his 1935 book, Black Reconstruction. And if you want an updated version of that, Eric Foner's book, what is the title? Man, my book's still packed up. I think it's Civil War and Reconstruction. You can get the short version, which is the abridged version, or you can get the unabridged version, which is the bigger version, the Eric Foner text, right? Uh, and you'll get the accurate history because all Foner did was updated. Much of what Foner did was just update Du Bois's argument. If for my people back home who are alum of Eastern Michigan University or have children or family members that attend Eastern Michigan University, have them take a class on Civil War and Reconstruction taught by Dr. Stephen J. Ramald. I learned much of my Civil War and Reconstruction history from him when I was earning my master's degree at Eastern Michigan University. He's still there. He ain't retired yet. He on Facebook, but don't harass him on Facebook, but he one of my Facebook friends. But if you, once again, I'll say, if you have children or loved ones, or you yourself are currently a student at Eastern Michigan University, and you want to learn more about the accurate history of Civil War and Reconstruction, Dr. Stephen J. Ramald in the history department, he got you covered. And just tell him Brother Kalanji, Dr. Walton sent me, to holler at you to take your class, or if you just had questions. You know what I'm saying? He's a professor at a public institution like I am. You can get his email, shoot him an email and say, I got some questions. Maybe he can suggest books, more books and things of that nature, to wet your whistle in that regard. All right. Well, I'm going to let y'all go. I got to shoot a couple moves, like I got to shoot to my office and stuff. We're supposed to get some snow up here in the mountains this evening, so I want to do that before the snow comes. Because, I ain't going to go outside tomorrow if we get the snow we're supposed to get. Because it's the mountains. And I know you from Michigan. Yeah, but it's the mountains, bro. It's one thing walking on flat land when there's snow everywhere, ice everywhere. Trying to walk up them hills on the mountains, boy, you ain't going to make it up. It's whole cars that they ain't going to be able to get up their driveway. It's going to go down if they don't do the proper preparations up here in Jackson County, North Carolina, the foot of the Appalachian Mountains, at the border of Tennessee and North Carolina. So, we about 30 minutes from Dollywood. That's when me and my wife went on me and my ex-wife went on our honeymoon. I know I got to get off now. I get to talking about ex-wife and shit. Peace. Love y'all. Happy New Year. Keep your mind right. Don't be a dumbass. Read a fucking book. Read newspaper articles. Do something with your life besides be a dumbass. Peace.